All right, quick editor's note. This is gonna be unscripted. I just wanted to film something and put it out as quickly as I could. This whole terrain project was just really impromptu and spur of the moment, and I'm not gonna write out a full script for this. This is just me speaking kind of over top of the footage. Anyway, when I was trying to 3D print this part for a larger Warhammer 40k tank, the print failed horribly, but this piece had a lot of really cool details on it, and I didn't really want it to go to waste. So I had an idea. I wanted to turn this into a terrain piece. I had a bunch of extra goodies from various other projects and model kits and failed prints. I started by making a base, just some polystyrene plastic card. I cut it out into a fun shape. I then sanded the edges because they were kind of a really rough cut. A lot of these elements of the piece I had to go, so I clipped them away to have a more workable and usable shape for this piece. A lot of this was just dry fitting. I kind of laid out on the plastic card where I wanted it to go. The big thing is cork. Cork is awesome because it looks like concrete if you paint it right. It looks like shattered, like asphalt. So that's exactly what I wanted to go for. I wanted it to look like a bit of roadway that had been busted up, or maybe this vehicle was in the subway and it busted through it, or maybe it had collapsed onto it. I don't know. But once I had everything laid out, I sealed it in with my favorite friend, super glue here. Love that it deletes my fingerprints for a few hours. That's great. Using some tweezers, I put everything in place. Once everything was glued down, it kind of started to take shape. And in my head, part of this process, this is where I start in my own head forming like the narrative of like, what happened to this with this place? What became of this? I wanted to use some of these 3D printing supports because I could throw them out so much and I wanted to do something with them. And I had some extra bits from some various Space Marines, so you know what that means. Bodies and battle damage. There's some chain swords staped into the front of it. There's a hand reaching out from under the rubble, like maybe he didn't just make it. One cool thing I found is this airbrush cleaning type thing. If you cut up these little bits, this is an original by the way, I found this on Instagram. If you insert these ends into the cork, it almost looks like rebar poking out of the concrete here. Once it gets painted, it'll really sell this effect. Like rebar has been barely holding this crumbling structure together. And yeah, this is what it was gonna be like unpainted. It really, even though it's still a pile of junk, it's really starting to come together. And you can see the individual elements, but also it very quickly starts to see the narrative, see the story. From this literal pile of junk, you can tell something happened here. This thing had history. I splurged a little and I bought this AK Interactive Asphalt Terrain texture paste. I know people say don't buy texture paste, just make your own, but I wanted to. This paste is really, really cool actually. So cool that I, like a doofus, managed to, spill it on camera. That's great. That's awesome. Glad I could waste this expensive texture paste right in front of you guys. Quality entertainment. Okay, so after making a huge mess and staining my hands, I just started stippling it onto the model. First, I just agitated it with this shaker. Then I started stippling it onto the model here. I first used this little texture tool, and that was going really slowly. So I gave up, and I used a brush, and things went a lot better. I was able to smooth out the pattern, really get the paste all over the cork. Again, I went back with the brush, dried it out. I used an old brush because obviously it kind of killed the brush. But once it dried, it's really coming together. The cork really looks like asphalt here. And it just really started to click for me. I also had this like Warhammer Terrain kit that I bought literally months ago. I had built, but I had never painted it. So instead, I took this opportunity to paint it up as well. For the painting, I used a tutorial from Midwinter Minis. It's a really quick and efficient way to paint terrain very quickly. These are large pieces, and large flat pieces aren't the best for miniature painting, but the tutorial I followed, which will be linked in the description, is really, really convenient. I spray painted everything black, and then I didn't have white spray primer for Zenithal highlight, so instead I kind of proxied it with a dry brush. It worked about 75% of the way, catching only the higher up elements and really dry brushing them. So that way it kind of simulated light casting shadows down below. It still worked as a highlight, and after layers and layers of paint and washes, it was fine. I stippled on some metallics to really highlight some details, because again, I want some texture here. Some of these radiators are getting the metal. Some of these window frames are getting metal, and no wash, no everything else, just 3 colors, and boom, it has texture. Now time for the dip wash. Here I am making all of it with some matte medium, PVA glue, water, and ink. I just thought I was super clever, and I tried to mix it by connecting some Lego pieces to a power drill. It didn't work very well, and I just took it outside, and it was too dark to film, so I unfortunately don't have footage, but here's the end result. It's a lot more subtle than I thought it was going to be, but it honestly really sells. The griminess, the bleakiness, almost the dustiness of a terrain field, like concrete dust is suspended in the air. My last little touch-up is I used this paint, Typhus Corrosion. It's a brush killer, by the way. It annihilated this poor brush, but it also looked like some built-up grime on the bottoms along the edges of this terrain. It looked like mud and grime have just been kicked up and had scuffed the edges of this building for years. Last little highlight, there's these skulls. Warhammer loved the skulls, so of course I just added a quick touch of contrast paint just to give some quick color changes. In the main terrain piece, I added some fuchsia colors, some little lines for the roads, and a Space Marine. Gave him a little bit of paint. Some wires, got a little detailing here and there, but overall it was just very simple. And again, it came out so well as a kind of a terrain centerpiece, as something an army can fight around in the middle of a battlefield. It'll probably act as ruin terrains in the new 10th edition rules. But yeah, all done. It really came together in the end. Just minimal effort, minimal painting, and even then it has so much character to it. I put some models down, I put some Leagues of Votann on there, and you can start to see it. You can start to picture the battlefield. These guys exploring some decrepit old ruins, fighting some alien adversaries, and the battle begins. And just with some simple terrain, all of a sudden the narrative begins to come forth in your mind. And I was surprised, and this is my first time ever doing terrain on this type of scale, and it really, really was fun to do. It was one of those mold-breaking things as a hobbyist that really kind of gets you out of your shoes, out of your comfort zone, and lets you have some fun. You get some really cool stuff, and I love all these dynamic battle shots I have of these two forces clashing. Even though they're static models, it has a lot of character. All right, bye for now.